Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today, I'm covering Back to the Past and The Bad Guy Club for Villains, two episodes all about superheroics and supervillainy. If one of these were a proper special, I would have made some themed graphics. It's not very often that we get two episodes that go together like this. And of course, these episodes were made to be a pair given the altered runtimes of both. Back to the Past is 16 minutes long and The Bad Guy Club for Villains is 8. This is a format that won't return for quite some time, so enjoy it while it lasts. Alright, that's enough for my intro. As always, let me take this moment to say thank you to everyone tuning in today. I appreciate y'all's support and interacting with everyone in the comments. And now, let's just get right into it. Remember when I was reviewing Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful and how I was talking about how that was the last major appearance of Squilliam Fancyson? Yeah, now we're at the actual last appearance, period. I mean, I know that this assertion is now outdated since he has appeared in a season 15 episode, but as I said then, I'm, pretty sure that's a non-speaking role. I could be wrong, but I feel rather confident. Well, anyway, moving on to the actual episode now, Back to the Past is the first part of what I like to think of as a two-episode Merman Man and Barnacle Boy special, and it's a good thing that this was the 16-minute fare, because this episode definitely needed it. Also, does anyone here remember the online game Legends of Bikini Bottom? There was a mini-game in that game based on this episode. Good times, good times. I think it's still playable through the SpongeBob Community's Flash Game collection, but I'd have to check and see. Back to the Past starts off pretty well with the imagery of the invisible boatmobile, which is, as always, so delightfully silly. I also appreciate that this episode gets right into things with SpongeBob and Patrick stumbling across Merman Man and Barnacle Boy, who are stuck around Jellyfish Fields since the invisible boatmobile ran out of gas. Luckily for them, the best friends help them out of this predicament by doing some manual labor. And luckily for SpongeBob and Patrick, the heroes, or really mostly Barnacle Boy, are feeling pretty generous today, and so he allows them to look at their locker of memorabilia, which is pretty good, and pretty cool, and so very comic book gimmicky. I just really like how, for this start of the episode, Merman Man and Barnacle Boy are pretty friendly with SpongeBob and Patrick. In this episode, it's possible that they don't even know them, but I'm choosing to believe that they're nearly friends by this point. After 7 seasons of history between these characters, even though the show doesn't have a strict continuity, it feels deserved. Because this episode features time travel, I'm reminded of the last time this show even touched time travel, which was SB-129, so it's been a while, and perhaps a plot like this was overdue. I say perhaps because personally, I don't really care a whole lot for time travel episodes. SB-129 was actually a great example of a time travel episode that works for me because there wasn't any angsting about changing the future or anything like that, just Squidward hanging in the future and then in the past, and then we get the joke at the end with Squidward having bootstrap paradoxed himself into a jellyfishing hell, and that's all an 11-minute cartoon episode needs. So with this in mind, because yes, this tangent does have a point, I am slightly concerned about the longer runtime of this episode and its use of time travel, because I fear that we're going to get one of those time travel plots that I do not care for. But it also depends on how serious the episode plays it, how much time it devotes to the plot, and how enjoyable things are overall. And although I'm ending the tangent now, this talk of time travel is a great segue into saying that I love the visuals of the time travel in this episode, and I also think it's inherently hilarious that this storage crate is the time machine. I love when time machines are these random places or objects that you wouldn't expect. It's amusing. And as a Doctor Who fan, it's sacrament. But anyway, while I'm here, since I can't seem to move on from this time travel yet, one thing that, well, it doesn't necessarily bother me, but I do question it, is why didn't Barnacle Boy and Merman Man just take SpongeBob and Patrick straight back to the present after letting them see the past for a second? Why have the two get out and explore at all if y'all were so worried about changing history? Especially if the heroes do know the best friends in this episode, y'all know good and well that these two cannot be trusted around anything dangerous at all. And yes, I'm aware that this happens so that we can have a plot, but I just feel they could have stuck in the time machine needs to cool down, or even the classic we need time machine fuel excuse in there to make things more believable. And yes, I know it's a ridiculous thing for me to say about an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, but it's just how I feel. And, okay, I swear I'll be more organized eventually, but one other thing that bothers me about this episode is how completely and utterly unhelpful Patrick is here. I mean, he's the reason that the future ends up being changed since he eats all of the tartar sauce because he has no self control. And unlike SpongeBob, Patrick doesn't really do anything to try to fix the future either. He just goes along for the ride and messes it all up again. It's a little bit frustrating, I cannot lie to you. Since I'm doing this vaguely chronological discussion of things I don't like about this episode, let me switch gears by talking about something I do like. I appreciate that this episode includes Man Ray because I do love me some Man Ray. I also love that Adam West and Burt Ward voiced the young Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy in this episode. I thought that was a super cool and a very full circle moment for this entire parody, given that Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are, of course, Batman and Robin XBs and or parodies. I mean, it's essentially the parodies meeting the originals. I love it. Also, I guess this goes to show that this show, by this point, has some real pull in getting its guest stars. Love that too. Once shit goes sideways in the past, the way that Patrick completely leaves Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, the old ones, in the dust is kind of funny. Like, hey now, I thought those were your heroes. But anyway, his actions here, both how he screwed the pooch and how he takes himself and SpongeBob back to the present, allow for us to see this neat alternate timeline where Man Ray wins that fight in the past and ends up becoming a dictator. And I really love the vibes here of this alternate timeline. SpongeBob and Patrick's obliviousness is amusing and funny, and that sign over the Krusty Krab reminds me of Mojo Jojo from the Powerpuff Girls and his verboseness. I also love how Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy end up aging the exact same way, so we get that minor reveal that the old versions we see are the young versions from before, and the old ones we've been used to all this time are dead. When SpongeBob, and I'm assuming Patrick, again, he doesn't really do shit, so how am I to know, realizes that the future has been screwed up because of their mistake, I like the way he tries to go the meaningful writing route when Mermaid Man says that Man Ray had him by the neck by being like, oh, okay, so you had trauma from your defeat, and then Mermaid Man being like, no, I literally have a collar on my neck. I don't know, this whole interaction just amused me. I feel like this was poking fun at comics too. Don't ask me how, I just feel like it was. It is from here that Back to the Past starts entering into some time travel zaniness. Clearly, this episode does not work on multiverse theory, and yes, I'm saying that in the TFS reference way, given that we start seeing clones of everybody. And having all of these copies of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy is really fun, especially once things get super chaotic. I love how in the beginning you can kind of guess where each SpongeBob and Patrick or Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy came from, before it just becomes completely unintelligible. And to me, this ending bit of Back to the Past is its best part. And I'm not saying this to knock on the episode at all, I'm just saying that the ending makes me think so much more positively on this episode as a whole since I like it so much, and that should be the goal for any episode ending, because that means that this episode stuck the landing with fervor. Back to the Past is just a really fun episode to me. This review feels about as chaotic as the episode itself does, and maybe that means something. Or maybe it doesn't. Either way, I liked this episode. The only thing I didn't really like was Patrick. His unhelpfulness got a little bit frustrating, but other than that, all good stuff here. This episode really hammers the comic book parody home, and I can enjoy that. While that may not be my favorite element in this show, episodes like these are wholly necessary, and so I will always appreciate them, especially as we near the last speaking appearances of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. So thinking of it all together, I think this episode works best in my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8.8 out of 10. As you might expect, based on what I've already said in the introduction and in the previous review, the Bad Guy Club for Villains is a fun little Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode. And just like last episode, in its own way at least, this episode features a bit of time travel. Time travel in that we're watching an old adventure of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Can't waste those guest stars, I see. Or that guest star, since only Adam West appears in this episode, not Burt Ward. Now, I need y'all to remember what I just got done saying about these comic book parodies in SpongeBob SquarePants. I might appreciate them, but I don't love them. They don't particularly enthrall me, so hopefully the rather short length of this review will not surprise you. One thing I liked about this episode is how it really leaned into being a parody of superhero cartoons / TV shows. Sure, it's not my favorite thing for this show to do, but I can admire the commitment. And committed it was. We even got a whole little theme song, a vintage filter over everything, and just the entire plot of the episode in general. It's all very much in line with that specific parody. And about the vintage filter for a second, I'll be honest, it got tiring after a while. If I wanted Pale Bob, I'd watch season 2 or Suds. But also, this episode, being a show within a show, doesn't really feature anything I normally want out of this show, which are the underwater adventures of an aquatic talking sponge and his meowing snail. LMAO. Anyway, yeah, that's another trope I'm not particularly fond of, the show within a show. It's fine for a joke or a cutaway gag, but for an entire episode, in the best of cases, that's pushing it, and in the vast majority of them, I'm not a fan. Given that this episode is an adventure of Merman Man and Barnacle Boy, it of course has to feature a fight. And the fight scene here is fun to watch, so that's definitely good for this episode's prospects. I also loved the showcasing of every character's powers and gimmicks. Now, given that we've already seen most of the IJLSA, much of this is not new, but still, I'm interested. Even though I wasn't a fan of the vintage filter, I was a fan of many of the character designs here. I love how for Miss Appear they were really just like, let's draw Wonder Woman, and at least for everyone else they tried. Oh, and to be clear, when I say I love, that is halfway sarcastic and halfway genuine. And I suppose that the Pyrite Ponderer does look like Dr. Manhattan with the bald head and the tanned complexion of the Silver Surfer. And I also loved the Dirty Bubbles little hat in this episode. I just thought it was cute and hilarious on him. The interweaving moments of SpongeBob and Patrick struggling with the tape, since this is, of course, an episode within an episode, were unnecessary, to be completely honest with y'all. These moments take us out of the immersion, and I don't really understand why, especially given this episode's limited runtime. That time could have been used elsewhere. It doesn't help that these moments aren't funny either, so being ripped from the immersion like this starts to become irritating. Anyway, after some fighting, we get the reveal that all the bad guys wanted to do by meeting up like this was have a book club. Now, my first question was why they didn't say anything earlier, but then I thought about how Merman Man and Barnacle Boy had pulled up already throwing hands, so yeah, of course they had to retaliate in kind. And then I loved the "no one can imprison you for reading" line, just because it's one of those hammy lines that you'd expect from the old superhero cartoons and comics this is parodying, but also because it just amuses me. It does make me consider current events, though, which is rather unfortunate. Bringing it all together now, the Bad Guy Club for Villains was a fun little episode that supplemented its sister quite nicely. Because that is exactly what this episode feels like, a supplement. It is, of course, a good episode on its own, but it feels even better when it's paired with another Merman Man and Barnacle Boy episode. And yeah, this episode is not particularly funny, but these kinds of episodes rarely are for me, so that's why this episode, instead of being in my great tier, is being placed in my good tier instead, where it comes in with a score of 7.7 out of 10. Not too shabby at all. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. Superheroes, superheroes, superheroes. That's all these episodes were. Well, obviously it's not all that they were, but that was the very strong connecting thread between them. I love when sister episodes are connected like this, it's just satisfying to me and makes watching both episodes together even better. I wonder how many other people find the Merman Man and Barnacle Boy stuff to be some of the weaker parts of the show. I don't dislike these parodies at all, don't get it twisted, but it's not what I came to this show to watch, I guess. I feel like that's the most simple way to put it. And don't get me wrong, I can like this stuff for sure. I love action movies, but superhero movies are things I already don't love a whole lot, especially not after sticking with the MCU through Endgame and then being unable to watch a single movie this side of Loki Season 1, but anyway. I guess that's probably all I can say for these closing thoughts today, so I'll go ahead and close things out here, and I'll see you all in the next review.